Hello again and welcome to World Talks, where every word matters. With me, Anna Kalczyńska. The Prime Minister of Vietnam, Pham Minh Chinh, visits Warsaw as Hanoi lifts visa requirements for Polish tourists. In an effort to bring the two countries closer, Poland and Vietnam boost defense ties just days after Hanoi signs a deal with Moscow. How does Hanoi profit from the two conflicted sides of the global political and economic contributors? And is there a leverage to be used by Warsaw in a diplomatic offensive against Russian influence in Asia? To unwrap the context of this cooperation and global interconnections, I'm joined now by Tomasz Obremski, resident fellow at Casimir Pulaski Foundation. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, what was the purpose of this visit of the Vietnamese Prime Minister to Warsaw, in your opinion?
Well, the things from the headlines that catch our Polish attention are definitely the visas to Vietnam. Poland, among other Eastern European countries, still needs a visa to enter Vietnam. It's not really complicated issue to get those visas. But it costs money additionally for exotic journey from Europe. It's $25. One can do it online. It takes 7 days. But it's indeed maybe, let's say, unfair because other countries of the EU like France, Germany do not need that visas. So that was the most desirable for Polish tourist sector achievement. However, we see some diplomatic mess around this issue because just after the Prime Minister already left Poland, it seems that this is not such a clear decision, that it will not happen immediately. There is a lot of diplomatic cloud around this decision, and I think within a day or two we will see some extra messages about when the implementation of this decision will take place. Apart from that, Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh arrived to Poland after visiting Russia. Russia is definitely a more strategic partner to Vietnam than Poland. 80% of all arms imported to Vietnam comes from Russia. Vietnam also decided is close to decide that 2 nuclear power plants are going to be built in the cooperation with the Russian industry. So Poland indeed tries to balance Russian influence in Asia, but it's still very long way to go. And Vietnam plays its own diplomatic game that we can talk about later. But it's good to see that Poland engages. Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh also invited Donald Tusk to visit Vietnam soon. This year marks 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between two countries, and both countries wants to see the way, a path to elevate the relationship to strategic partnership.
Right. Interestingly enough, both Poland and Russia have commenced those bilateral diplomatic relations with Vietnam 75 years ago. So now Poland and Vietnam have pledged to cooperate more closely on defense, security and technology. As I mentioned before, and as you mentioned, the days after Hanoi boosted collaboration on nuclear energy with Moscow. Sometimes this kind of diplomacy is being called bamboo diplomacy. So what is it, in your opinion? Can it be characterized as such?
Well, the thing is that when we look at the other Asian countries, for example, India, just 1 year ago, we also had anniversary of our diplomatic relations, and we also elevated during the Modi's visit to Warsaw on his way to Kyiv the relationship to strategic partnership. But we all know the historical connection of India to Russia is dependency on the Russian energy, on Russian military industry. So those countries are historically praising themselves for being non-aligned countries, for praising diplomacy over sanctions, over conflict. We have to remember the joint history of Vietnam and Russia. That the part of this history is also the relationship with Poland. We need to remember that Vietnam is a communist country when it comes to the political system. It's run by the Communist Party. A bit differently, but we can further simplify it that it's a bit similar that as in China. Prime Minister himself is the only third person in the country after Secretary General of the Vietnamese Communist Party and the President of Vietnam. So also the objective of Vietnam in the foreign policy is leveraging and balancing the Chinese influence in the South China Sea but they still engage with China economically. So they are playing more sophisticated game. Russia and the war in Ukraine is more further away, but they do have a big impact on associations such as ASEAN on the global South. So I can see that here we are, I think, having the footage of the visit of President Andrzej Duda in 2017 to Vietnam. So already 8 years ago, it seems that there is more need for more frequent visits and relationship and consider elevating the relationship to the strategic level. Vietnam is also realizing that Poland spends 5% on the defense. It's exporting to Poland already a lot of electronics that can be that Vietnam would like to see in the dual use technologies, etc. So there is no way to boo Vietnam on the fact that it does cooperate with Russia. Rather than that, we should engage them with more and try to just take some part of the cake that Russia already has.
Exactly. So the big question is, can this Polish-Vietnamese friendship bring some political fruits in the long term, or is it just pure economics? As you rightly pointed out, Vietnam is a communist country, however thriving economically. Now, Vietnam and Russia have a long story of friendly relationships and cooperation, and they continue to grow steadily, yet the Polish diplomatic ministry stated that the agreement signed provides for the intensification of bilateral dialogue through the implementation of political consultations, exchange of information, dialogue in multilateral forums. So what does it mean exactly when we look at the footage of this more than friendly pictures, right? Donald Tusk and his counterpart, Pham Minh Chinh. Can it translate it into something more, into some kind of Eastern diplomacy, Polish Eastern diplomacy, and a real development?
I think both sides would like it to be translated into something bigger, but yet it's to be established how. We see that last year Minister Sikorski went for his visit to Asia, to Malaysia, to Indonesia. This year he wants to go to Africa, representing the Council of the European Union as Poland has the presidency. Here, just after we had a visit of Vietnamese Prime Minister, but there is also an invitation to Hanoi. So I see that there is visible that Poland starts to be more engaged with the countries of the global South, but still we have not that much to offer to actually really make those relationships so strategic. But let's get to the path to actually achieve that. And there is also already in force the agreement, the civil aviation agreement between Vietnam and Poland. So there can be there should be open direct flight connection between Vietnam and Poland. Vietnamese airlines recently opened some connections to Germany. Before pandemic, Polish airlines LOT were considering opening the connection to Hanoi, which will also boost the business cooperation. Vietnam has very lower labor cost, whereas still very much advanced and educated. Polish companies like LPP are located in Vietnam with their textile production. So maybe since the Russian air is closed for Polish airlines and it's very hard right now to develop connections to Japan, to China, we should be more focused on the Southeast Asia, like Vietnam. And diplomatically, Vietnam plays very important role in ASEAN. That is a strategic partner to the entire EU. That is important from the point of view of our presidency. In 2020, a free trade agreement came into force between the EU and Vietnam, and since then we have seen a very big rise of trade between Poland and Vietnam. Vietnam is indeed developing very fast. It's twice bigger country when it comes to population than Poland, but 4 times smaller economy. But it's developing on a speed of 7% per year. But when you look at the power purchase index, both economies stand at a very similar level. So Vietnam is already accelerated faster than us, although we are also developing faster. So definitely it's good that we are talking about and examining those options to elevate our relations already now, because with the speed of development of our both economies, it seems that with the possibility to open new connections, to open new business, it's really visible that there is going to be more to cooperate on.
So much about economy, but the two leaders discussed very openly geopolitical tensions and the war in Ukraine, says the communique following the meeting. So according to what's been stated, Poland and Vietnam could do something more to make the conflict in Ukraine end as soon as possible, said Donald Tusk. So this is just pure diplomatic talk, or do you think this is real?
So far, rather pure diplomatic talk. Indeed, Vietnam, despite being a communist country, is very much attached to so-called liberal world order. As important country of ASEAN, it praises the concept of ASEAN centrality, that ASEAN plays a very important role in geopolitics of Asia, that it's very neutral, that it can broke the deals between the countries. However, the impact of Southeast Asian countries on the war in Ukraine is limited. We have seen the efforts of Indonesian president in 2022 to actually broke some deal at the beginning of the conflict. I think it's very important for for diplomatic reason for the communication after such meeting to mention Ukraine, to say that we want this, both countries want this conflict to be opened. But indeed, Vietnam will not resign from its cooperation with Russia. Vietnam is sending some limited symbolic, but it is sending some humanitarian aid to Ukraine. And it's definitely in its interest for food security reasons, for energy security reasons, to end this conflict. Apart from some multilateral formats, its direct impact is rather limited. So it's good to talk about it. It's good to mention it on every occasion. But in this particular conflict, I think it's more of the diplomatic message rather than real impact.
Thank you very much. Tomasz Obremski, resident fellow at Casimir Pulaski Foundation, was our guest this morning. Thank you once again for joining.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
And that's it for this edition of World Talks. Stay tuned to TVP World as we're coming with news very soon.